I was left at the altar humiliated in front of the whole city. But instead of breaking, I made the boldest choice of my life. I replaced my runaway groom with billionaire Damien Ross. And when he came crawling back, shattered and desperate, I finally chose the man who never let me fall. The heavy satin of my wedding dress pressed down on me like a crown made of stone. The bodice was hand-stitched, ivory silk embroidered with tiny pearls that shimmered whenever the light struck them. It was supposed to feel like a dream, the culmination of 6 months of fittings, planning, and painstaking detail. Instead, it felt like a costume, something I was forcing myself to wear, while my heart whispered warnings I didn't want to hear. The bridal suite was buzzing with nervous energy. My bridesmaids whispered in hushed tones, the makeup artist fussed with her brushes, and the floral team rushed in and out with last-minute touches. But beneath it all I sensed it, the unease in the air. Like a room holding its breath. I tried not to think about Ethan. I tried not to notice that he hadn't come by to see me, not even for a quick word. Tradition dictated the groom shouldn't see the bride before the ceremony, but Ethan never cared much for tradition. He always did what he wanted and I always let him. I looked at myself in the mirror. A veil of delicate lace framed my face, my lipstick was the perfect shade of rose, and my hair was pinned in a bun so tight it felt like my scalp was stitched back. I looked like a woman who had everything. The perfect groom. The perfect family alliance. The perfect wedding of the century. Then the knock came. The door opened and my wedding planner Charlotte stumbled inside. Her clipboard shook in her hands, her usually composed face pale and strained. "Miss Hayes," she whispered, voice tight. There's a problem." I set down the lip gloss the stylist had just handed me. "What problem?" Charlotte swallowed hard. "It's Mr. Carter. He's not here." The room fell silent. The bridesmaids froze, eyes darting to me, to Charlotte, and back to me again. "What do you mean he's not here?" My voice cut through the air, calm but sharp. Charlotte shifted on her heels. He left. Said he had something urgent to attend to. He told the groomsmen he couldn't stay. My chest tightened, though my face betrayed nothing. I had practiced this mask for years. "Something urgent," I repeated flatly. "What exactly?" She hesitated. "His sister. Madison. She's not feeling well." My hand tightened on the armrest of the vanity chair. Of course. Madison. The name alone was enough to send a cold rush through me. As if conjured by my thoughts, my phone lit up on the vanity table, vibrating with Ethan's custom ringtone. My bridesmaids glanced at it, then at me. I could feel their anticipation, their pity. I pressed answer and lifted the phone to my ear. "Claire." Ethan's voice came through, low and apologetic, as though he'd just canceled dinner, not abandoned his wedding. "I'm sorry. Something urgent came up." I closed my eyes. "You left." "I didn't want to, but Madison isn't well. She needed me. I can't just ignore her." The name hit like a slap. "Always her. Always Madison. What about the wedding, Ethan?" I asked. My voice didn't tremble. It was steady, like a blade held at someone's throat. Pause. I could hear the murmur of hospital equipment in the background. His exhale crackled over the line. "I'll have my assistant inform the guests," he said casually. "We can reschedule for tomorrow. Just one day, Claire. It's not the end of the world. Please explain it to your grandfather for me." I almost laughed. Tomorrow? After half a year of planning? After hundreds of guests had flown across oceans, filled hotels, cleared calendars? He wanted me to brush it off like a rain delay at a baseball game. "It's not the end of the world," he repeated when I stayed silent. My lips curved upward, but the sound that left me wasn't amusement. It was a bitter, sharp laugh. "You really believe that, don't you?" I whispered. "That everything can be postponed, replaced, ignored. That I can be postponed, replaced, ignored." "Claire, don't start." His voice hardened. "You're being emotional. Madison is family." I had no choice. Family. The word was poison. If Madison was family, then why did he always look at her like she was the center of his universe? Why did he abandon me time after time for her slightest whim? I opened my eyes, staring at my reflection. I didn't see a bride anymore. I saw a woman who had spent 3 years apologizing for loving the wrong man. No choice. My tone was ice. "Ethan, you made a choice. And it wasn't me." He inhaled sharply. "Don't exaggerate." I love you. This is just one day. No, my voice cut him off. Come. Final. Our marriage is over. Let's break up. The bridal suite was so quiet I could hear the air conditioner hum. Bridesmaids gaped. The planner's clipboard nearly slipped from her hands. On the line, Ethan's breathing quickened. Don't joke like that, Claire. You don't mean it. I tilted my head, studying the woman in the mirror. The flawless makeup, the gown worth more than a year's salary for most people, the pearls that once belonged to my mother. I looked untouchable, but I felt stripped bare. I'm not joking, I said softly. There was a pause, then his voice changed, harder, sharper. You're acting unreasonable. I understand you're upset, but you need to calm down. We'll marry tomorrow after Madison's surgery. That's final. Even now, even after humiliating me before the entire city, he thought he could command me. That I would bend the way I always had. I almost pitied him. Goodbye, Ethan. I hung up. When I set the phone down, the room erupted. Claire, my best friend gasped, voice breaking with fury. He just abandoned you. Do you hear yourself? He thinks he can just postpone the wedding like it's a dinner reservation. Another bridesmaid whispered, horrified, what are we supposed to tell the guests? Charlotte wrung her hands. Miss Hayes, should we postpone? Cancel. I stood, the gown rustling around me like waves. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. No postponements. No cancellations, I said coldly. The wedding goes on. Everyone stared at me, stunned into silence. But, Claire, the groom isn't here, someone whispered. I looked at them, then at my reflection once more. My lips curved into the faintest, most dangerous smile. Then I'll find another one. The room was empty now, save for the soft ticking of the clock and the rustle of my gown as I lowered myself back into the vanity chair. My bridesmaids had left reluctantly, whispering amongst themselves. Charlotte had gone off to field the guests, pale with panic. I was alone. My phone buzzed again on the vanity and my stomach clenched. For a heartbeat, I thought it was Ethan calling back, ready to bark his commands until I folded the way I always did. But the name that lit up the screen was different. Madison Blake. A text message. I stared at it, pulse quickening before swiping it open. Sister Claire, I won't wish you a happy wedding because tomorrow's wedding won't go smoothly. Ethan and I have been together since we were children. You will always choose me. Even on your wedding day. Let's make a bet. The words blurred for a moment as rage pulsed hot through my veins. My fingers gripped the phone so tightly the pearl nail polish on my manicure cracked against the glass. So this was it. The smug confidence, the challenge she couldn't resist. Madison had always played this game, but tonight she'd finally stripped away the last pretense. She wasn't Ethan's sister. She was his weakness. His soft spot. His priority. And she knew it. I dropped the phone onto the vanity table and pressed my palms into the skirt of my gown, fighting the sting at the corners of my eyes. Oh, I wouldn't cry. Not now. Not for her. But the memories came anyway, sharp and merciless. The first time I saw it, really saw it, was during our engagement dinner. Madison had admired my ring, her eyes wide and glittering. It's so beautiful, she'd said, holding my hand like she wanted to devour it. I wish I had one just like it. I laughed awkwardly, about to thank her, but before I could, Ethan had slipped the ring from my finger, holding it out to her with a grin. Try it on, Mads. It'll look good on you too. I had smiled, brittle and tight, as Madison slid my ring onto her finger. Everyone laughed, called it cute. But in my chest something cracked. That crack deepened weeks later when Madison fainted during my dress fitting. One moment I was standing on the pedestal as the seamstress pinned lace to perfection. The next, Ethan's hands were on Madison, carrying her out of the boutique like a knight rescuing his maiden. He didn't even look back. I rode home in the car alone, dress half-pinned, pins stabbing into my skin with every movement. No. He had left me at the altar. On my wedding day. For her. I stared at my reflection again. The gown was flawless, the pearls elegant, the veil perfect. But my eyes were red, my cheeks flushed with more than rouge. I whispered to the empty room, I was never first. Never. Not once. Every fight we'd had, every cold shoulder, every humiliating moment. I had endured it, believing that once I became his wife I would finally matter. That once the vows were spoken, Ethan would put me above her. But Madison had warned me, hadn't she? The night before, her text had been the final nail. Even on your wedding day he will choose me. He was right. And I hated myself for ever doubting it. The anger rose slowly at first, then all at once, like a dam breaking. I slammed the vanity drawer shut so hard a bottle of perfume toppled and shattered on the floor, filling the air with the cloying scent of roses. How dare she? How dare he? 3 years of swallowing my pride, of apologizing even when I was the one left behind, of wagging my tail like a pathetic puppy just to be noticed. And for what? To be abandoned in front of hundreds of guests, while he ran to her side. My best friend's words echoed in my head. He doesn't deserve you. He never did. For once I believed it. A chill ran through me as another thought slipped into my mind. How many times had Madison been sick at just the right moment? How many times had she fainted, complained, cried, pulling Ethan's attention away from me and onto her? Too many. And Ethan never questioned it. Not once. He indulged her every time, even at the cost of humiliating me. Even now on our wedding day. I whispered into the silence, I wasn't marrying Ethan. I was marrying into their relationship. And I was the outsider all along. The realization was like ice water down my spine. But beneath the ache, something else flickered to life. A spark I hadn't felt in years. Defiance. If Madison thought she had won, she was wrong. If Ethan thought I'd wait, humiliated, for him to crawl back tomorrow, he was even more delusional. I wouldn't play this game anymore. This wedding wouldn't be cancelled. It wouldn't be postponed. It would be remembered. I picked up my phone again and scrolled through my contacts, my hand trembling but my eyes clear. Somewhere in that list was a name I had never dared to call, a promise I had never dared to cash in. Not yet. But Madison's smug little bet had pushed me too far. If Ethan could abandon me for his sister, then I could abandon him for someone who actually kept their word. I lifted my chin, my reflection staring back with fire in her eyes. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't look like Ethan Carter's fiancée. I looked like Claire Hayes. And I was done being second place. I had just slipped my phone back into the vanity drawer when it buzzed again. The name flashing across the screen made my jaw tighten. Ethan Carter. Of course. He couldn't leave it alone. Ethan never could. He lived with the certainty that no matter how many times he abandoned me, I would always be there, waiting with open arms. Not today. I answered anyway, if only to hear the arrogance I knew was coming. Claire, he said, voice clipped this time, stripped of its earlier apology. What the hell do you think you're doing? Hanging up on me. My fingers curled around the edge of the vanity. Exactly what you heard. You're being ridiculous. His tone was harsh now, his usual mask gone. You know I had no choice. Madison needed me. I'll fix this. Tomorrow we'll. There is no tomorrow, Ethan. My voice cut across his like a blade. Pause, then his scoff. You're emotional. Always so emotional when it comes to Madison. I swear, Claire, if you'd just stop imagining things. I'm not imagining anything, I snapped. My bridesmaids, gathered near the door, stiffened at the sharpness of my tone. They'd never heard me raise my voice to him before. Do you even hear yourself? Ethan pressed on. We're talking about one day. But what's a single day compared to the rest of our lives? I almost laughed at the absurdity. The rest of our lives. Ethan, you've spent the past 3 years proving that Madison will always come first. Don't talk to me about the rest of our lives when you can't even put me first on my wedding day. His silence was heavy, then his voice came low, dangerous. Don't push me, Claire. You'll regret it. I let out a shaky breath. I already regret everything, Ethan. Every year I wasted loving you. The room had gone dead silent. My bridesmaids stood frozen, wide-eyed, their makeup brushes and bouquets limp in their hands. Even Charlotte, who was usually all business, had her mouth slightly open. One of them, Emily, whispered, Claire, are you really ending it? I turned to them, phone still clutched in my hand, Ethan's angry breathing crackling through the speaker. Yes. The word hung in the air like thunder. Don't be dramatic, Ethan barked from the line. You're humiliating yourself in front of everyone. Stop this nonsense and tell Charlotte to postpone. I'll be back tomorrow after Madison's surgery and we'll get married as planned. End of story. My chest ached, but not with longing. With fury. With freedom. No, Ethan, I said clearly so everyone in the room could hear. The story ends today. He let out a harsh laugh. You think you can just walk away from me? From this wedding? You think anyone will take you seriously after this stunt? The venom in his tone was familiar, the same one he used when I dared to question him at dinners, when I asked too many times where he was, when I wondered why Madison always seemed to come first. But for once the venom didn't seep into my veins. It rolled off me like water. You already walked away, Ethan, I whispered. I'm just following your lead. God damn it, Claire. His voice cracked with sudden fury, but I cut him off. Goodbye, Ethan. I hit end call before he could spit another word. The phone slid from my fingers and clattered onto the vanity. For a long moment I just sat there, my chest heaving, my gown pooling around me in waves of silk. I had said it. The words I thought I'd never have the courage to say. It was over. My best friend knelt beside me, grabbing my hands. Her eyes were glossy, her mascara already smudging. Claire, you finally did it. I swallowed hard. Yes. Another bridesmaid whispered, you're brave. I don't think I could have done that. Brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt gutted, like someone had taken a scalpel to my chest and scraped out 3 years of hope, leaving nothing but raw emptiness. But underneath the ache was something else. Something steadier. Relief. Charlotte cleared her throat awkwardly, her voice trembling. Miss Hayes, the guests, they'll be expecting an announcement. If the groom isn't here. Her words trailed off, heavy with unspoken judgment. If Ethan had abandoned me for Madison on our wedding day, the gossip would be merciless. The city would feast on my humiliation. I pressed my lips together. There won't be a cancellation. Charlotte blinked. What? I said there won't be a cancellation. I forced myself to stand, gathering the heavy skirts of my gown. My legs trembled beneath the weight, but I stood tall. This wedding goes on. The room erupted with gasps. But Claire, Emily stammered. The groom? Ethan Carter is no longer the groom, I said coldly. That's all they need to know. As if on cue, the phone lit up again, Ethan's name flashing angrily across the screen. For a moment the temptation surged, to answer, to hear him beg, to let him soothe me with promises I knew were empty. But no. I pressed decline and let the silence speak for itself. For 3 years I had been the one to apologize, to beg, to forgive. Tonight Ethan could taste what it felt like to be the one left unheard. I turned to the mirror again. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes glistened, and a single strand of hair had escaped my bun, curling rebelliously against my cheek. For the first time I didn't fix it. For the first time I didn't care. I looked like a woman who had been broken and decided not to stay broken. My voice was steady as I said to my stunned bridesmaids, help me finish getting ready. We have a wedding to attend. The air in the bridal suite had shifted. My bridesmaids stared at me like I had lost my mind. Charlotte fidgeted with her clipboard as if she could hide behind it, and my phone continued to buzz with Ethan's name flashing across the screen. I ignored it. Instead I stood before the mirror, gown spilling across the carpet, veil cascading down my back. I looked at myself the way I imagined the guests would in less than an hour. Pitiful, abandoned, humiliated. But no. Not tonight. Tonight I would rewrite the story. I smoothed the gown with both hands and whispered to my reflection, this wedding will not be remembered for Ethan Carter's absence. It will be remembered for my choice. Half an hour later, the murmur of hundreds of guests filtered through the thick doors of the ballroom. I could almost hear the whispers, the speculation. Did you hear? The groom hasn't shown up. Madison Blake is behind this, I guarantee it. Poor Claire Hayes. Left at the altar in front of the whole city. My stomach twisted, but I lifted my chin. Let them whisper. For once I wasn't going to cower. Charlotte rushed back into the suite, face flushed. Claire, the orchestra is ready, but the guests are restless. What should we do? The wedding continues, I said firmly. But without a groom? I turned slowly toward her, my lips curving into the kind of smile that frightened even me. Who said there won't be a groom? After they left, I locked the door behind them. My hands shook slightly as I pulled my phone out again and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I had never dared to dial. Damian Ross. The name alone carried weight. He was the man who'd taken over Ross Industries by the age of 25, the man every headline called ruthless, untouchable. Years ago, after a car accident that nearly cost me my life, Damian had been there, indirectly. He'd intervened when his reckless cousin had been at fault. And afterward he had told me quietly, If you ever need anything, call me. You'll have my word. I had never taken him up on it. He'll know. My thumb hovered over the screen before pressing call. The line rang once. Twice. Then, a voice deep and steady. Damian Ross. I took a deep breath. It's Claire Hayes. Pause. Then a hint of surprise under his calmness. Miss Hayes. On your wedding day? Why are you calling me? My throat tightened. No turning back now. You once said you owed me a favor. I'm here to collect it. Another pause. His voice sharpened, curious. What is it you need? I closed my eyes, forcing the words out. I need a groom. For a long moment, silence stretched across the line. I could hear only the thud of my own heart. When he finally spoke, his tone was flat, unreadable. You're asking me to marry you. Yes. My voice shook, but I steadied it. Tonight. Right now. Another silence. Then a faint exhale that sounded almost like a laugh, though there was no humor in it. You don't ask for small things, Miss Hayes. I don't have small problems, I whispered. When he answered again, his voice carried a finality that made my breath hitch. Wait. The line went dead. Minutes later, the music swelled. The ballroom doors loomed before me, heavy and carved, their handles gleaming under the chandelier light. My bridesmaids flanked me, pale with nerves. Claire, Emily whispered, he's not here. Are you really going to walk out there alone? I lifted my chin. Yes. Watch me. The doors opened. The light from the ballroom blinded me for a second, the vast sea of faces turning toward me in unison. Hundreds of guests, every eye fixed on me. The whispers were immediate. She's walking alone. Where's Ethan? Poor girl, she's been abandoned. I forced my lips into a serene smile, though inside my heart hammered like a war drum. I stepped forward, each footfall echoing against the polished floor, the train of my gown sweeping behind me. Halfway down the aisle, the whispers grew louder, crueler. The bride without a groom. Imagine the scandal. Grandpa Hayes must be furious. My hands trembled against the bouquet, but I didn't falter. Not even when I heard someone chuckle outright, not even when the humiliation burned my skin. The heavy doors behind me groaned open again. A hush fell across the room. I froze, every nerve taut. A figure stepped into the ballroom. Impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that caught the light. His presence swept through the hall like a storm, silencing every whisper. Damian Ross. He strode forward with measured steps, his aura commanding, his gaze fixed on me. The corners of his coat fluttered like wings, his polished shoes striking against the floor with finality. When he reached me, he didn't hesitate. He stopped at my side, looked down at me with eyes that glimmered under the chandelier, and said clearly for everyone to hear, I'm here to marry you. The ballroom erupted. Gasps. Shouts. Whispers that buzzed like electricity. Is that Damian Ross? The CEO of Ross Industries? My God, Claire Hayes replaced Ethan Carter with him? I stood frozen, bouquet trembling in my hands, staring up at him. His expression was calm, almost indifferent, but in his eyes was something else. A quiet resolve. And in that moment, for the first time that night, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen. The room was still buzzing, an orchestra of whispers and sharp inhales, when Damian Ross positioned himself at my side. He didn't touch me, didn't even glance down as if to ask permission. He simply stood there, tall and immovable, like he had always been meant to. And yet, just his presence alone shifted everything. The shame that had been pressing on my shoulders, the weight of being abandoned in front of the city, cracked under the force of his aura. My humiliation became something else, something sharper, almost defiant. I wasn't standing alone anymore. The guests didn't know whether to breathe or bow. Damian extended his arm, not with flourish, not even with warmth, but with the unspoken command of a man who expected me to take it. And I did. The moment my hand rested on his sleeve, a new wave of gasps swept the room. Phones lifted discreetly. No, not discreetly, boldly, screens already recording, capturing history as it unfolded. Together we walked down the aisle. Every step echoed differently now. No longer hollow, no longer fragile. With Damian beside me, the marble floor seemed to amplify each stride, steady and sure. I could feel hundreds of eyes drilling into us, but I kept my chin high. If they wanted a spectacle, I'd give them one. We reached the altar. The officiant, a silver-haired man who had clearly not signed up for scandal, fumbled with his notes before whispering, "Ms. Hayes. Mr. Ross. Are you both prepared?" Damien's answer was smooth, controlled. "Yes." My own voice, though tight, didn't waver. "Yes." The officiant's hands trembled as he turned the page. The crowd was a sea of craned necks and camera flashes, their curiosity burning through me. The ceremony began. I barely heard the words. Do you promise? For richer or poorer?" All I could feel was the pounding of my heart and the weight of Damien's presence beside me. When it was my turn, the words caught in my throat. I wasn't marrying out of love. I wasn't pledging my life. This was survival. Defiance. A gamble to save myself from ruin. But my voice rang clear. "I do." The officiant turned to Damien. "Do you, Damien Ross, take Claire Hayes?" "I do," he said without a shred of hesitation. His tone carried no romance, no warmth, but also no doubt. And that was enough. "By the power vested in me, you may now kiss the bride." My pulse spiked. I turned my face toward him, ready to whisper, "We don't have to do this part. We can skip it." But Damien moved first. His hand cupped the back of my head, steady but firm, tilting me toward him. His lips pressed against mine, cool at first, then lingering just a fraction too long to be mistaken as purely symbolic. The ballroom erupted. Gasps. Applause. Shouts. And everywhere the sharp click of cameras, the glow of recording phones. I felt dizzy, not from the kiss itself but from the storm it unleashed. My humiliation hadn't just been erased. It had been rewritten into something unprecedented, something explosive. Damien Ross had kissed me at the altar, and the city would never stop talking about it. The whispers surged like a tidal wave. "Damien Ross? She replaced Ethan Carter with him. She's insane or brilliant. He's the youngest billionaire in the country. Does she realize what she's just done? This is going viral. It's already on Twitter. Check your phone." From the corner of my eye, I saw my bridesmaids staring, mouths open, torn between shock and awe. Even Charlotte had lowered her clipboard, speechless. Me. My hands trembled around the bouquet, but I forced myself to stand tall, lips still tingling with the imprint of his. The moment we walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, the storm broke in full. I could hear the clicking of reporters' cameras outside the ballroom, the frenzy of guests live-streaming from their seats. Notifications buzzed on my abandoned phone in the suite. I could practically see the hashtags forming. Hashtag wedding of the century. Hashtag bride replaces groom. Hashtag Damien Ross. By morning, I knew every corner of the internet would be dissecting this night. My humiliation had become a spectacle, but not of pity, of awe. And for the first time in years, the thought made me smile. As the crowd surged around us, people whispering, congratulating, speculating, Damien leaned down just enough for only me to hear. "You wanted a groom," he said calmly. "Now you have one." His words weren't tender. They were a contract. Feck. And though my stomach churned with fear of what tomorrow would bring, I lifted my chin and met his gaze. "Then let's give them a show." The ballroom lights were still blinding when we left the stage, hands clasped only for the benefit of the crowd. My lips still tingled faintly, the phantom trace of Damien Ross's kiss lingering like an unwanted brand. The air behind the doors was different. Quieter. Heavier. The sound of champagne glasses clinking and gossip rising in the ballroom dulled to a distant hum as the two of us entered the lounge together. I dropped the bouquet onto the nearest table, petals scattering like casualties. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Thank you," I managed, the word tasting awkward in my mouth. "For that." Damien didn't look at me. He strode to the sofa, sat down, and began fiddling with the wedding band newly slid onto his finger. His profile was carved from stone, sharp, unmoved. "Don't thank me," he said flatly. "I don't do charity." A knock on the door interrupted my silence. His assistant entered, arms laden with sleek black folders. He set them neatly on the glass table and stepped back, eyes downcast as if even glancing at his employer was forbidden. Damien gestured toward the folder nearest to me. "Take a look." I hesitated before pulling it closer. The words stamped at the top made my breath hitch. "Marriage agreement." My stomach dropped. Page after page unfurled before me. Clauses, conditions, signatures, lines. Damien had thought of everything. The public narrative, the division of assets, expectations of conduct. "This wedding isn't just gossip," he said, voice like tempered steel. "It's front-page news. For both of our reputations, we maintain this marriage for 2 years. After that, we can dissolve it quietly if we choose." 2 years. I traced the bolded words with my fingertip. This wasn't a rescue. It was a merger. My throat tightened. "You planned this?" His gaze flicked to me, steady, unreadable. "I plan everything." I wanted to laugh or maybe scream. Here I was, a bride abandoned by the man I thought I loved, and my replacement groom had walked in with a contract already waiting in the wings. "You make it sound like a business acquisition," I whispered. "It is." His tone didn't waver. "You get a husband. I get leverage. The city stops laughing at you and they stop underestimating me. Everyone wins." "Everyone except me," I thought bitterly. I flipped through the pages again. My name was typed neatly beside his. The date was today. The witnesses' spaces already filled by his assistant and another silent staff member who had slipped in unnoticed. "You're serious," I breathed. "I don't waste time on jokes." I stared down at the pen resting neatly beside the agreement. I could walk away. I could tear the contract in half and storm out, let the scandal burn me alive. But then I thought of Grandpa Hayes. His heart condition. How Ethan's betrayal had nearly put him in the hospital at our engagement party. Could I let him endure tonight's humiliation too? Oh. My hand trembled, but I picked up the pen. With one careful stroke, I signed my name beside Damien Ross's. "Good," Damien said and nodded to his assistant. Another folder appeared, thinner this time. I opened it and froze. Marriage certificate. Already prepared. Already stamped. My knees weakened. You arranged this?" He leaned back, utterly calm. "Did you think I walked into that ballroom without contingency plans? If I was going to put my name beside yours, it was going to be binding." I laughed, then a hollow, disbelieving sound. "So I'm really married. Not to Ethan Carter, not to the man I begged for 3 years to love me, but to you, a stranger." His gaze lingered on me, unblinking. "Not a stranger. Your husband." The words jolted through me. Final. He rose smoothly, buttoning his jacket. "You'll move into my villa tomorrow. Everything you'll need has already been prepared. Don't bring anything unnecessary." I blinked at him. "You already?" "I plan," he repeated as if that explained everything. Something inside me twisted. Fear, awe, resentment, I couldn't name it. He had turned my disaster into a contract before I'd even finished falling apart. When he left the lounge, his assistant trailing like a shadow, I remained behind. The marriage certificate felt hot in my hands, as though it were burning into my skin. My bridesmaids peeked in from the hall, their eyes wide. Emily whispered, "Claire, what have you done?" I swallowed hard. I survived. It was only half a lie. That night, lying awake in the guest room of my family's house, I stared at the ceiling and let the truth sink in. In one day, I had gone from abandoned fiancée to the wife of Damien Ross. The city would never stop talking. Ethan would never forgive me. Madison would never let me forget. But for the first time in years, I wasn't begging. I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't second. I was Claire Hayes, wife of Damien Ross. And whether it destroyed me or remade me, there was no turning back. By morning, the city was no longer mine. It belonged to the headlines. I didn't need to scroll far. Every notification on my phone screamed the same thing. Clips of the wedding circulated endlessly. My solitary walk down the aisle, the gasp when the heavy doors swung open, Damien Ross cutting through the ballroom like he owned it. And then the kiss. God, the kiss had been slowed down, looped, remixed to music. Bride replaces groom. Carter family humiliated. Damien Ross shocks Shanghai. For the first time in weeks, the spotlight wasn't on Ethan Carter's perfection. It was on his absence and my audacity. My thumb hovered over the buzzing screen. Part of me wanted to shut it all off, hide from the avalanche of speculation. But another part, the stronger part, watched the videos with an unfamiliar thrill. I had become the scandal and the sensation all at once. And somewhere across the city, Ethan was watching too. The whispers reached me long before I saw him. Ryan Cole, his closest friend, had apparently gone pale when he broke the news. Ethan had laughed first. Sharp, cruel laughter, the kind that pretended not to bleed. She loves me too much to marry someone else, he had said. Especially not Ross. It's a stunt. She's angry, that's all. But denial couldn't stand against the evidence. The marriage certificate had already leaked. Official, signed, stamped. Photos of Damien sliding a ring onto my finger were plastered across every site, every gossip page. Ethan's laughter had curdled into silence. Then fury. Madison was with him, of course. He always was. She's just trying to punish you, she murmured, pale from her injury, her arm wrapped in a bandage more decorative than necessary. You know she could never truly leave. Not you. Her voice was honey poured over poison, coaxing his pride back to life. But Ethan was already pacing, storm brewing in his eyes. She humiliated me in front of the entire city. With him. Damien Ross. That man has wanted leverage over me for years. Madison tilted her head, feigning innocence. Then take her back. Make her remember she belongs to you. The spark lit. And Ethan, who had walked out on me without hesitation, suddenly remembered the sting of being the one left behind. By afternoon I knew he would come. It was in the way my phone buzzed with his name unanswered again and again. In the way Ryan sent a terse warning text. He's not stable. Be careful. Even Damien's assistant glanced at me knowingly as he updated schedules in the villa, as though he too expected Ethan to appear like a storm cloud on the horizon. And when I drove back to my family's townhouse that evening to collect the rest of my belongings, my dread solidified. Because Ethan was waiting. He stood by the gate, tall and rigid, the glow of the street lamps carving hard shadows across his face. His suit jacket was wrinkled, his tie loosened, his eyes bloodshot. For a man who had always prided himself on control, he looked undone. When I stepped out of the car, suitcase in hand, his gaze locked onto me like a predator. Claire. His voice was low, cracked around the edges. I froze, gripping the suitcase handle tighter. You shouldn't be here. He took a step closer, anger radiating off him in waves. You think you can just, what? Replace me? Parade Ross in front of the whole city like some prize. My pulse hammered, but I forced myself to stand tall. You replaced yourself, Ethan. You left me. His face contorted, disbelief and fury battling across his features. God, Claire. He laughed, ragged and humorless, dragging a hand through his disheveled hair. What have you done? You married him. Damien Ross. Do you have any idea what people are saying? Do you have any idea how this makes me look? I swallowed hard. This isn't about how you look. His eyes snapped back to mine, sharp as blades. It's always been about us. And you, his voice broke slightly, softening, you love me. You've always loved me. Tell me this isn't real. Tell me you didn't mean it. For a second, the words clawed at my heart, digging into the remnants of the girl who once would have melted at his plea. But that girl had been buried beneath 3 years of neglect. I did love you, I whispered. And you killed it. His face twisted, grief flashing before rage swallowed it whole. In 2 strides he was in front of me, his hand clamping around my arm. You're mine, Claire, he hissed, voice shaking. Not his. Do you hear me? Mine. Pain shot up my arm, but I didn't flinch. Not this time. No, Ethan. I was never yours. Not when you chose Madison every time I needed you. His grip tightened. My skin burned. And then another voice cut through the night. Let her go. I turned my head, breath catching. Damien Ross stood just beyond the gate, flanked by 2 silent men in dark suits. His hands were in his pockets, his posture relaxed, but his eyes were cold steel. The air between the 2 men crackled. Ethan dropped my arm slowly, but his body was taut with fury. You think you can swoop in and steal what's mine, Ross? Damien stepped forward, calm, unhurried. I didn't steal. You abandoned. The words sliced the air. Ethan's laugh was sharp, bitter. You don't love her. This is just a power play. Damien's expression didn't flicker. Maybe. But I was there when it mattered. You weren't. The truth landed like a blow. Ethan's face reddened, veins standing out at his temple. He lunged forward, fists clenched. You bastard. One of Damien's men stepped subtly closer, but Damien raised a hand to stop him. His voice was low, dangerous. Careful, Carter. Cameras are everywhere. And he was right. From the corner of my eye, I saw the glow of phones lifted by curious neighbors. The argument spilled into the street. Voices rose, ugly and raw. She's mine. Ethan shouted, pointing at me, his face twisted with desperation. Tell him, Claire. Tell them this is a lie. My throat ached, but my voice was steady. It's not a lie. I'm not yours, Ethan. Not anymore. Gasps rippled through the small crowd that had gathered. The phones kept recording. Ethan's fury boiled over. In a blur of motion he swung. Whether at Damien or the night itself I couldn't tell, but Damien sidestepped with infuriating calm. Ethan stumbled, nearly tripping before being restrained by his own friend Ryan, who had finally arrived, panting. The humiliation was total. By morning the clips were everywhere. Ethan Carter, drunk and furious, brawls in the street. Damien Ross remains calm as Carter loses control. Claire Hayes, the bride who walked away. The city feasted on it. Commentators speculated, strangers cheered my boldness. Some pitied Ethan, most mocked him. For once I wasn't the one being laughed at. He was. At the villa, 2 assistants carried my suitcases inside. I clutched my handbag tighter as if it might shield me from the immensity of the place. Damien was already there. Of course he was. Standing at the base of the sweeping staircase, his posture perfect, his expression unreadable. He didn't greet me like a husband welcoming a bride. He regarded me like an investment arriving at his doorstep. You're late, he said. My spine stiffened. It's 7 o'clock, exactly as you told me. Exactly isn't punctual. His eyes flicked to the bags. Is that all? The assistant scurried away. I swallowed hard. I didn't bring much. You said not to. Good, he replied, turning toward the stairs. Unnecessary baggage has no place here. He wasn't talking about the luggage. Dinner was served in a dining room so long I could barely see the other end. I sat at the massive oak table, the chandelier spilling light across polished silverware. Damien sat across from me, hands folded, as though this were a board meeting instead of our first evening as husband and wife. There are rules, he said without preamble. I set down my fork. Rules. He nodded once. This marriage exists in the public eye. We will dine together 3 times a week, attend events as necessary and maintain the appearance of unity. In return you will have access to everything that comes with being Mrs. Ross. Status, security, influence. And what do you get? I asked softly. His gaze met mine, steady and sharp. What I always get. Control. The words settled over me like ice. And if I break the rules? I asked. He leaned back in his chair. Don't. I wanted to snap at him, to tell him I wasn't a child he could scold, but something in his tone stopped me. It wasn't a threat. It was certainty. Later that night, as I wandered through the villa's vast halls, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against my better judgment I answered. Claire. Ethan's voice, low and ragged. I froze. Don't call me again. You don't mean that. He's using you. You know it. I love you. The line went dead before he could finish. I turned slowly. Damien stood a few feet away, phone still in his hand. He had ended the call. Were you listening? I demanded. His eyes were cold. I was protecting you. I don't need your protection. Yes, he said simply, you do. I hated the way my chest tightened at his words. The next morning I came downstairs dressed in a cream blouse and tailored skirt, ready to visit my grandfather at the hospital. Damien's eyes flicked over me briefly before he set down his coffee. Change. I blinked. Excuse me. That skirt is too short. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I've worn this 100 times. Not as my wife, he said calmly, sipping his coffee. Anger flared. You don't own me. His gaze pinned me to the floor. Legally for the next 2 years I do. The audacity stole my breath. And yet part of me thrilled at the way he said it. Like a vow, like a line drawn that no one else could cross. I went upstairs and changed, hating myself for obeying. That evening we attended a charity gala. Cameras flashed the moment we stepped from the car. Damien's hand rested lightly at my waist, firm enough for the world to see, light enough to make me wonder if he even noticed. Inside whispers followed us. She really married him. She looks terrified. He looks possessive. I stiffened, but Damien bent his head close enough for only me to hear. Smile, Claire. I forced my lips into a curve. I'm not your puppet. You're worse, he murmured, a ghost of a smirk playing at his lips. You're my wife. I glanced up sharply, ready to retort, but the flash of amusement in his eyes disarmed me. For the first time I realized Damien Ross could tease. And I didn't hate it. Later that night after the gala I slipped off my heels in the foyer, wincing as my toes throbbed. Without a word, Damien crouched before me, one knee on the marble floor. I froze as he lifted my foot gently, sliding the heel off and setting it aside. I can do it myself, I whispered, startled. I know, he said quietly, brushing his thumb over the sore skin of my ankle. But why should you? For a man of contracts and control, the gesture was startlingly tender. I didn't know what to say. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm. Breakfasts half shared in silence, evenings attending events where we played our roles. But in the in-between moments something shifted. I caught him watching me sometimes, when I laughed at something Emily texted, when I lingered by the window staring at the city lights. His eyes would soften for just a second before hardening again. And I found myself watching him too, how he loosened his tie after a long day, how his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, how his voice dropped when he spoke privately to me. This wasn't supposed to happen. But it was. One night, as rain battered the glass walls of the villa, I found him in his study, tie undone, hair slightly disheveled. You work too much, I said before I could stop myself. He looked up, surprised. And you wander too much. I smiled faintly. Maybe we balance each other. For the first time Damien Ross actually laughed. Not a smirk, not a scoff. A real laugh, low and rough, like he hadn't used the sound in years. The sound curled inside me, warm and dangerous. As I turned to leave he spoke. Claire. I paused. His gaze locked onto mine, serious now. No matter what Ethan Carter does next, remember this. You're mine. Not because of a contract. Not because of a scandal. But because I won't let anyone else have you. The words struck something deep inside me, terrifying and thrilling all at once. For the first time since my wedding day I didn't feel abandoned. I felt claimed. And against all reason I wasn't sure I wanted to fight it. The storm had been brewing for weeks. Everywhere I went, I caught whispers of Ethan Carter's unraveling. Articles spoke of his erratic behavior, his missed meetings, his temper snapping at partners who had once admired him. Investors were pulling away, whispering Damien's name instead. But gossip was nothing new. What made my stomach twist was the way he still tried to reach me. The unanswered calls. The bouquets sent to the villa returned unopened. The desperate letters in his familiar handwriting begging for a meeting. I ignored them all. Or tried to. Because deep down I knew Ethan wouldn't stop there. It was at the Hayes Foundation fundraiser. Damien and I walked in together, his hand at the small of my back, his presence as commanding as ever. Cameras flashed, the room buzzing with curiosity. And then I saw him. Ethan. He stood across the ballroom, pale but still immaculately dressed, a champagne flute untouched in his hand. His eyes found mine instantly, burning with a mix of longing and fury. I felt Damien's hand press more firmly against my back, grounding me. Ignore him, he murmured. But Ethan wasn't here to be ignored. He intercepted us near the staircase, blocking our path. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Claire, he said, voice cracking with raw urgency. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. Damien's body shifted subtly, shielding me. Step aside, Carter. Ethan's jaw clenched. This isn't your business, Ross. This is between me and her. No, Damien said calmly, his hand tightening on my waist. It stopped being between you and her the moment you walked away from the altar. The ballroom held its breath. I forced myself to meet Ethan's gaze. Say what you need to say. But this is the last time. His face crumpled. I was wrong, Claire. About everything. Madison, she's nothing. I thought she needed me, but she used me. You're the one I love. You've always been the one. Tears glistened in his eyes. His voice shook. Marry me again. Forget this sham. You know Ross doesn't care about you. Not like I do. My chest tightened, old scars pulling, but I forced myself to breathe. You loved me so much you left me on our wedding day. That was a mistake, he shouted, desperation spilling into rage. One mistake. No, I cut him off. 3 years of mistakes. 3 years of choosing her over me. This isn't about one day, Ethan. This is about every day you made me feel invisible. The silence after my words was deafening. And then the venom arrived. Madison swept into the circle, her gown shimmering like a weapon, her lips curved into a cruel smile. She's lying, Ethan. Don't let her manipulate you. She married Damien for status, for revenge. She never loved you the way I did. Her voice carried across the room, sharp as glass. I was the one by your side when you were at your lowest. I was the one you trusted. She's nothing but a spoiled child who wanted a bigger toy. Gasp spread. Phones lifted. The scene was no longer private, it was a spectacle. And Madison, blinded by her own malice, didn't care. Ethan turned on her, voice raw. Stop it, Madison. She froze. Ethan. No. His eyes burned with something I had never seen before. Clarity. You don't love me. You love controlling me. Every fainting spell, every stage drama. You made me your servant and I was too blind to see it. Her face blanched. That's not true. He laughed bitterly, the sound breaking. It's all true. You ruined me. And I let you. For once, the crowd wasn't whispering about me. They were watching Madison Blake crumble. Ethan looked back at me, tears spilling now. Claire, please. Don't let this be the end. I'll change. I'll prove it. Just don't choose him. His hand reached for mine. But before he could touch me, Damien's arm came around my waist, pulling me against his side. His voice was low, lethal. Touch her and you won't walk out of here. The possessiveness in his tone sent a shiver down my spine. And for the first time Ethan saw what I already knew. Damien Ross wasn't a placeholder. He was immovable. I looked at Ethan, at the man I had once loved so completely that I had erased myself for him. The man who had taught me what it meant to beg, to wait, to ache. And I felt nothing. You're right, Ethan, I said softly. This is the end. His face crumpled, a sound escaping his throat like a wounded animal. He staggered back, the crowd parting around him as though he carried a contagion. Madison reached for him, but he shoved her away, his fury spilling over. You'll regret this, he shouted, voice breaking. Both of you. But even as the words left his mouth, no one believed them. Not even him. By the next morning, every outlet had the footage. Ethan Carter's desperate plea, Madison Blake's venom, their public unraveling. The Carter family's shares dropped. Business partners severed ties. And Madison? She vanished from the city within days, her name poisoned beyond repair. Ethan's empire collapsed, not with fire but with silence, doors closing one by one, until he had nothing left but regret. Me. For the first time in years I felt free. That night Damien and I sat in his study, the fire casting shadows across the room. You ended it, he said simply. Yes. My voice trembled with relief. Finally. His gaze softened almost imperceptibly. Good. Because he never deserved you. I met his eyes, the weight of the evening settling into something lighter, warmer. And you do. A faint smirk curved his lips. I always take what I deserve. Dangerous. Unapologetic. And God help me, I was starting to want it. The city moved on quicker than I expected. 4 weeks, Ethan Carter's downfall had dominated headlines. Golden Boy falls. Carter legacy in ruins. From Groom to outcast. Madison Blake's name had become poison in every circle that mattered. Her photographs splashed across tabloids with captions sharp as knives. Manipulator, mistress, liar. And then, silence. Like all scandals, they faded, replaced by fresher gossip. And with them gone, I found myself standing in a strange, unfamiliar quiet. For the first time in years, my life wasn't defined by Ethan's shadow. No one whispered about his devotion to Madison while I smiled through clenched teeth. No one looked at me with pity, wondering how much humiliation I could endure before breaking. The world still whispered, but now the whispers were different. She really married him, Damien Ross. Have you seen the way he looks at her? Maybe it wasn't a scandal. Maybe it was fate. I didn't know about fate. But I did know this, I could breathe again. The mornings were no longer filled with dread over where Ethan was, or who he was with. I woke up in Damien's villa, sunlight spilling across endless windows, the city glittering at my feet. And him. Always him somewhere nearby. Not hovering, not suffocating, just there. A steady presence, like an anchor I hadn't known I needed. Dinner was different now. Gone were the stiff silences and businesslike pronouncements. We still ate at the same long oak table, but now instead of treating it like a boardroom, Damien leaned back in his chair, jacket undone, tie loosened, watching me with a quiet intensity that made me fumble with my fork. One night as the housekeeper cleared the plates, I caught him still staring. "What?" I asked, heat creeping up my neck. "Nothing." His lips curved faintly. "You eat slower than you used to." I blinked. "You noticed." "I notice everything," he said simply. I rolled my eyes, though my pulse quickened. "So what, now my eating habits are part of the contract too?" He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "There is no contract at dinner, Claire." His voice softened, almost teasing. "At dinner you're just my wife." The word made something flutter in my chest. Wife. He'd used it before, always in public, always calculated. But here alone the word sounded different. Unrehearsed. I looked down at my wineglass, swirling the red liquid to hide the way my lips wanted to curve. "You're awfully smug tonight." "Am I?" His tone was lazy, but his eyes glittered with amusement. "Maybe it's because you're finally starting to look at me instead of past me." I shot him a sharp glance. "And what exactly am I supposed to see?" His smirk deepened. "A husband who notices everything." I'd braced myself for coldness, for distance, for a marriage of convenience that would remain a performance. But instead there were these moments. Unexpected, disarming, pulling laughter from my lips before I could stop it. Another night as I walked into the study with tea, I found him asleep on the leather sofa, tie discarded, hair falling across his forehead. The sight startled me, not because he was handsome, though he was devastatingly so, but because he looked human. Tired. Vulnerable. I hesitated, then carefully draped a blanket over him. Before I could pull away, his hand shot out, capturing my wrist. His eyes opened, dark and sharp despite his fatigue. "You're supposed to be asleep," he murmured. "So are you," I shot back, but my voice was softer than I intended. His grip loosened, but he didn't let go completely. Instead, his thumb brushed lightly against my pulse, a feather-soft touch that sent warmth curling through me. "Don't take care of me, Claire," he said, eyes locked on mine. "I'm not used to it." I swallowed hard. Maybe that's the problem. His lips curved, but not into a smirk. Something gentler. He let go, closing his eyes again, but the ghost of his touch lingered against my skin long after. At the gala the following week, his protectiveness showed itself again, not in words but in the way his body angled toward mine when a man leaned too close, the way his hand settled on my waist with a firmness that told the world she's taken. "Possessive much?" I whispered under my breath as another camera flashed. "Always," he murmured back, lips close enough that I felt the warmth of his breath on my ear. "You just never noticed before." The shiver that raced through me wasn't from the cold champagne glass in my hand. The rain always made me restless. That night I stood by the villa's glass wall, watching the storm blur the city into streaks of silver. My reflection stared back at me, hair loose, silk robe cinched at the waist, bare feet pressed against cool marble. For the first time in weeks I wasn't thinking of Ethan. I was thinking of myself. And of Damien. I sensed him before I heard him. His footsteps were quiet, his presence heavier than the storm outside. "You're awake late," he said, voice low, smooth. "So are you," I answered, not turning. He came to stand beside me, hands in his pockets, his reflection joining mine in the glass. For a moment we just watched the rain. Then the words slipped out of me, unbidden. "Do you know what it feels like to beg someone to love you?" Silence. My chest tightened. I almost regretted speaking until he replied quietly, "Yes." My head snapped toward him. "You." His gaze stayed on the storm. "My father believed power was love. My mother left when I was a boy. I spent years trying to earn his approval. I never got it." The admission startled me. Damien Ross, untouchable billionaire, confessing to wounds that mirrored mine. "I gave Ethan 3 years," I whispered. My throat ached. 3 years of forgiving, apologizing, waiting. I thought if I gave him everything he would finally see me. But all he saw was her. My voice cracked. "Sometimes I wonder if there's something broken in me." At that, Damien turned fully, his gaze sharp, steady. "You are not broken, Claire." He was blind. "That's not your flaw, it's his failure." I blinked rapidly, heat prickling behind my eyes. "You say that so easily." "Because it's true." His hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed a tear from my cheek. His touch was surprisingly gentle for a man known for ruthlessness. Don't mistake someone's inability to love you for your inability to be loved. The words sank deep, stitching something I hadn't realized was still bleeding. The storm pressed harder against the glass, wind rattling the panes. My heart beat faster, not from the thunder but from the closeness of him, his hand still hovering by my face, his eyes dark and intent. Damien, my voice trembled. Why are you really here? Why did you say yes that night? His lips curved, not quite a smile. Because you asked. That's not an answer. He leaned in slightly, his scent, clean, crisp, tinged with something darker, curling around me. I don't waste time on things that don't matter. You mattered. The words stole my breath. I tried to laugh to break the tension. You're awfully dramatic for a businessman. He tilted his head, studying me. And you're awfully brave for a woman who thinks she's fragile. My pulse raced. His eyes dropped briefly to my lips before rising again, and the room thickened with unspoken things. Say it, I whispered, not even sure what I wanted. Instead, his hand slid to the back of my neck, slow, deliberate, giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. When his mouth touched mine, it wasn't like the kiss at the altar, meant for the crowd, calculated for spectacle. This was different. Softer, lingering, almost questioning. I melted before I could stop myself. My hands lifted to his chest, clutching the fabric of his shirt. The storm outside roared, but all I heard was the sound of his breath mingling with mine. When he finally pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. His voice was rougher now. Careful, Claire. Once I start wanting, I don't stop. I shivered, not from fear but from the truth in his tone. Maybe, I whispered, I don't want you to stop. The silence that followed was electric. His smirk was gone, replaced by something heavier, hungrier. Then don't test me with half answers. If you're mine completely. I should have been terrified of his possessiveness. Instead, I felt the ground shift beneath me, steady for the first time in years. Because maybe, that was exactly what I wanted. The rain never stopped that night. It battered the glass like it wanted to remind me of everything chaotic, everything wild outside the villa. But inside, the storm was different. It lived in my chest, in my pulse, in the heat that surged through me when Damien's lips returned to mine. This time the kiss wasn't tentative. It was sure, commanding, as though he'd waited too long to hold back. His hands framed my face, strong yet reverent, tilting me to deepen the kiss. I gasped against him and he swallowed the sound like it was meant for him alone. When his mouth moved down the line of my jaw, I whispered his name, not in fear but in surrender. Damien. He stilled, his forehead pressing to mine, his breath ragged. Claire, if you want me to stop. I don't, I cut in, surprising even myself with the certainty in my voice. His eyes searched mine, dark and burning. Whatever he found there must have convinced him, because the next moment he swept me into his arms, carrying me through the hall like I weighed nothing. The bedroom door clicked shut behind us. And when it broke, leaving us tangled and breathless, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I was whole. We lay in silence after, the only sound the steady rhythm of rain and his heartbeat beneath my ear. His arm was draped around me, heavy and protective, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my skin. I should have felt exposed. Had I felt safe. Damien. I whispered. MHM. His voice was low, drowsy but alert. Was this still part of the contract? He went still. Then he tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his gaze. No, Claire. This was never about a contract. My throat tightened. Then what is it about? His thumb brushed my cheek. It's about the fact that I don't want 2 years. I want forever. The words slammed into me, raw and unpolished, nothing like the carefully measured man I'd known. You mean that? I asked softly. His eyes burned into mine, steady as the rain. I don't say what I don't mean. Emotion surged in my chest, thick and overwhelming. For so long I had begged to be chosen. And here now, without pleading, without compromising, I was. I leaned up and kissed him again, slow and lingering. Not out of desperation. Out of love. Because somewhere between the storm and the silence, Damien Ross had stopped being my savior, my contract, my shield. He had become my everything. The end.